In business today, three things to know. First, so what happened to all the new jobs? This week's solid economic news ends with a bit of a fizzle as the unemployment rate goes up. Then, where's Eva Perón when you need her? Argentina spirals towards default. Is there a chance of the economic fallout reaching the U.S.? And how do celebrities get those great smiles? We'll get some inside tips from a dentist to the stars. Arise Xchange for Friday starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's not the jobs report we were expecting or most likely hoping for. The U.S. added 209,000 new non-farm jobs in July. Economists generally expected 233,000. And the unemployment rate ticked up to 6.2%, but that could be seen as good news since more people entered the job force looking for work. We have created more than 200,000 jobs in each of the last 6 months, and President Obama focused on that in a mid-afternoon news conference.
This morning, we learned that our economy created over 200,000 new jobs in July. That's on top of about 300,000 new jobs in June. So we are now in a 6-month streak with at least 200,000 new jobs each month. That's the first time that has happened since 1997. Over the past year, we've added more jobs than any year since 2006. And all told, our businesses have created 9.9 million new jobs over the past 53 months. That's the longest streak of private sector job creation in our history.
The president also took time to blast Republicans in Congress for creating gridlock.
I've been advocating on behalf of raising the minimum wage, making it easier for working folks to pay off their student loans, fair pay, paid leave. All these policies have two things in common. All of them would help working families feel more stable and secure, and all of them, so far, have been blocked or ignored by Republicans in Congress.
So the markets bounced back from session lows, believing the softer jobs report than expected means the U.S. Federal Reserve will keep interest rates low. Here are the final numbers for the week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 70 points, down triple digits when the markets opened, so bounced back a little bit to 16,493. The S&P 500 off by 552, and the Nasdaq off, closing the day at 43.52. Some of the top stocks we're watching today as corporate earnings news continues. Burger King Worldwide says it earned a quarter per share, but missed on revenues, bringing in $261 million. Burger King also says it will stop buying from OSI Group. Those are the suppliers in China after that company repackaged and sold expired meat to fast food chains. Not a tough decision there, I don't think. Burger King closing at $26.25. Chevron also beat earnings and disappointed on revenue. The company's per-share earnings of $2.77 above expectations. Chevron bringing in about $55.5 billion this quarter on lower production. Chevron trading down $1.34. And Procter & Gamble disappointed on its last quarter of its fiscal year. Earnings per share of 95 cents. Those were a bit above expectations, but overall revenue of $20 billion missed expectations. The company also announcing it will cut about half of its brands to boost sales. P&G up $233 to $79.65. And a look at commodities. Gold closing up $12.20 and oil down 53 cents. What to make of the jobs report? Jim Kochan is the chief fixed income strategist with Wells Fargo Funds Management. Jim, welcome back to Arise Xchange.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
So you look at this jobs report, and does this possibly give less ammunition to the hawks in the Fed who may want to raise interest rates faster than, let's say, Janet Yellen?
I think at the margin it probably does. The fact of the matter is it's going to be Chairperson Yellen who's going to make that decision primarily as to when to raise the federal funds rate. But the fact that you still have a very high level of unemployment in that U6 measure and that average hourly earnings didn't show any increase, those are the kind of things that she watches. And at the margin, like you said, I think this diminishes the argument for the hawks who might want to see the federal funds rate start going up sooner than perhaps Chairperson Yellen would like to see.
What to make of sort of the missed number here for what economists had expected? Were we just getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because of the GDP numbers and some other factors?
Well, I think there was some of that. The GDP numbers don't always work themselves into the employment numbers directly. But if you look at the 3-month moving average for employment gains, it's 245,000 per month. I think that's a pretty good measure of the trend for employment growth. We were stronger than that in June. We're somewhat weaker than that in July. But overall, that seems to be what the economy is doing, generating jobs in the neighborhood of 225 to 250,000 jobs each month.
Do you think we're generating enough jobs yet to, A, start really bringing down the unemployment rate, and B, to start getting some wage pressure here?
Well, those are two interesting questions. I think the answer to the first question is yes. We are getting enough job growth to bring the unemployment rate down gradually. But there are several factors holding back wage growth, and one of them is international competition. Companies face such intense competition, they can't raise prices, they can't grant significant wage increases. And there are these underutilized resources in the labor market that, by and large, keep downward pressure or prevent upward pressure on wages.
And if you look at the numbers, though, and we said this at the top, there is some encouraging news when the unemployment rate actually goes up, because we're starting to see more participation in the labor market. Is that correct? And
yes.
Would you consider that
Yes.
that says that people are starting to feel a little bit better about finding a job?
Well, I think so. There was a good-sized increase in the labor force here in July. The unemployment rate went up because the household employment survey wasn't as strong. But we had been lamenting the fact that we're not seeing increases in the labor force. Well, here was a reasonably good increase. And there were other economic data this week that were really quite good, particularly that ISM manufacturing index was very strong.
But construction spending did fall in June. Anything to be concerned about
Somewhat.
that?
No, I don't think so. We would like to see stronger housing data. There's no question about that. That seems to have leveled off a little bit here in the last month or two. But the fundamentals for housing construction are still quite good. And if the economy continues growing at a moderate pace, construction spending will be growing at a moderate pace.
Yeah, on your blog, in fact, you say that the key missing ingredient here from this recovery is housing. So what do you think is going wrong with housing, and are there signs that's going to turn around?
Well, sales have slowed. They've sort of leveled off here. Sales of new homes were fairly weak last month. There seems to be a pause in terms of the willingness of folks to take on mortgages for purchases. Those numbers are flat. They're not growing very fast, even though mortgage rates are extraordinarily low. Now, this may be a 1 or 2 month pause. We have to wait and see. But housing has lost a little bit of its dynamic input on GDP growth here. There's no question about it. You'd like to see stronger housing starts. You'd like to see better home sales. You'd like to see better mortgage application data. I think that we will see gradual improvement in these data, but again, that's a forecast, and I'd like to see the numbers come through.
Okay, Jim Kochan, Chief Fixed Income Strategist at Wells Fargo Funds Management. Have a nice weekend.
Well, thank you very much.
It's said to be business as usual in Buenos Aires, even as the country is now technically in default. The U.S. credit rating agency Standard & Poor's said the Latin American country has defaulted on its debt, a claim the Argentinian government calls, quote, an absurd lie. Nevertheless, the country has not paid $1.5 billion on bonds and missed a deadline this week on making regular interest payments. All of this has ended up in the U.S. courts, which is muddling any resolution. Joining us now is Gabe Borenstein. He's managing director at Enclave Capital. Gabe, welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Thanks for inviting me again.
The New York Times says Argentina is in default and also in denial. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Clearly, they defaulted on a $500 million payment, period.
And they say they didn't.
It is an ongoing issue, but the U.S. District Court has ruled that the holders of restructured debt reverting back to 2001 cannot be paid until the holdouts get paid first. It's a judicial ruling.
Okay, so what has put Argentina in this predicament?
In 2001, Argentina had defaulted on $100 billion of loans, driven primarily by 20% unemployment, recession, etc., and inability to pay existing loans.
Has the country, what is the monetary policy of the country? I mean, do you think that there's any plan in place to pull Argentina out of this?
I doubt it. Argentina reflects symptomatic problems of Latin America in general. Basically, we're talking about relatively high unemployment, relatively low per capita income, high per capita debt, relatively high interest rates, which basically choking an opportunity to expand.
And do you think not the political will in Argentina to solve it?
I think political will would have to circumvent international law, including the outstanding debt to many creditors.
Okay, so what is Argentina's next step here? Do you think that they're going to do being called in default, and what does that mean? Are we going to start seizing assets here? And what can they do to pull themselves out?
Basically, they will have to address the ruling of district court in the U.S. Since they are technically in a default, they will likely be locked out of international capital markets. That will basically limit the ability to fund themselves, and it could push the country into recession in due time.
You know, if you look at what the BRICS countries are doing, and its neighbor Brazil, creating sort of this alternate to the World Bank, is there any access for money for Argentina from a bailout, for example, from other countries? Something that we've seen in Europe?
At this point, I am skeptical. Again, countries in a default.
And as far as the impact on Latin America, you said this is symptomatic of Latin America. So, is this going to spill over to other Latin American countries? And then, how does this impact the United States?
I think let's start with the last question first. I think U.S. is basically insulated from these external issues. In fact, progressive increase in external instability, including Argentina and potentially Latin America, makes U.S. an ideal investment platform, and I would expect convergence of external capital funds into the U.S., I take it back, into dollar-denominated assets. As far as Argentina, I believe there will be broad repercussion on the Latin America simply because they all have similar problem, which I've mentioned before. And again, relatively high external debt, high unemployment, relatively high rates, very high per capita debt, and relatively low per capita income.
So it sounds like they're going to need some external help here then. They're having high unemployment and they have high debt and they don't have the funds to pay off its debt. It sounds like they're going to need some bailout.
Potentially, they likely could. The question is, who will provide that aid? And that is the greatest risk for the external economy.
I was about to ask you that. I mean, does the United States have a dog in this fight then to get involved?
I think, given political headlines in the U.S., which includes some other Latin American issues, as you know, I doubt that the Congress would be able to initiate relevant financial help for Latin America.
And as far as you know, then, the American exposure to Argentina right now is somewhat limited.
It's very limited. Again, I believe that acceleration and progression of this external socio-political instability, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Latin America, will only enhance the value of dollar-denominated assets.
So all of it is just going to flight to quality.
Absolutely.
Flight to quality comes back to the United States.
By default, so perhaps.
By default, we look better.
Exactly.
Even though we have a debt and all of our other...
Well, we actually reduced our debt.
That's true. We are reducing the debt. I appreciate that. Gabe Borenstein, Managing Director at Enclave Capital. Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me again.
Come anytime.
Thank you.
Coming up, Americans are warned against traveling to some West African nations because of the Ebola virus. An update next. You're watching Rise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Mainstream news has covered all of the issues of the world, which are like this, through a very narrow lens. And at Arise News, we do things different. We cover every culture, every angle. Our mission is to go to these places, to these communities, whether they're in Africa, whether they're in Europe, Asia, the United States, the Caribbean. And we're going to find these stories and we're going to tell them to our audience. Stories that they probably never heard of before, and stories that they'll find interesting and engaging.
The World Health Organization saying Friday that the outbreak of Ebola is out of control and could become a catastrophe. It is now the worst Ebola outbreak since the virus first surfaced in the 1970s, with 729 deaths. Meantime, there are now widespread travel advisories, and analysts warn that the economy of West African nations could next be victim. Joining us by phone is Dr. Elaina George, who is on the Advisory Council of Project 21 Black Leadership Network. She is also an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, and she has been following the story for us for some time. Doctor, do you have a quick update first on where we stand right now with the fight against Ebola?
Well, right now we have the CDC and the World Health Organization. They're both ramping up efforts to try to curb this. The World Health Organization is launching a $100 million response to send more medical personnel and supplies to the region. And the CDC is planning to send 50 experts to try to curb this.
And we're starting to see some travel advisories, the U.S. State Department warning against traveling to some places. You don't think that we're doing enough here as far as cracking down on travel, do you?
I'm very concerned that there seems to be a kind of lackadaisical response to this. You know, if this is, as the West African countries are saying, the worst outbreak ever seen, that it's now spreading from country to country, at least 3 that have been affected there. We're allowing people to travel and basically trying to quarantine them after the fact of coming into the country, after spending hours on a plane with hundreds of other people. I just find that to be a little bit concerning because we're not exactly sure how the virus has changed. When it first started in 1996, it was so virulent, it killed so quickly that it didn't spread very far, and it ended very quickly. This is the longest outbreak that we've seen. I personally question whether the nature of the virus has changed any. And, you know, they say that it's not airborne, but if you do end up getting exposed to a bodily fluid, someone coughs on you, someone throws up on you, or you get exposed to any body fluid, it is communicable. So what's going on that they just seem to be, we're getting information kind of slowly, and it doesn't seem to be any kind of urgency associated with it, especially here in the U.S., it seems.
Do you agree with the WHO's assessment that this is out of control and that we're headed for a catastrophe?
Well, I think that they've already said that Sierra Leone is looking for about 30,000 people who may have been exposed to it, and the borders are so porous that they're crossing back and forth between the countries, and they may be underestimating the number of people because the rural people are not actually coming forth and coming to the hospital. So it may be an underestimation. That's also concerning to me.
Now, I understand that we are flying home an American doctor who was infected, I think, in Liberia, and he's flying to the United States. I believe that we need to bring citizens home to get the best health care coverage possible, especially people who are there on a humanitarian effort. But is there any risk to that?
I think there could be. I mean, anything can happen on the transport in. And, you know, there's another way to look at this. I certainly think that anybody who's putting themselves on the front line needs to be cared for. So it's not about that. It's about safety for everybody. And perhaps maybe it would have been a wiser move to send a team of CDC workers with equipment to him and actually bring American healthcare system there instead of perhaps exposing the rest of the country. Remember, Ebola has never entered America before. This is the first time. It's also going to Germany. Some other health workers also being transported to Germany. So with something this contagious, this toxic, this high mortality rate, I just think, you know, caution is the better situation here.
And what are you hearing?
Thinking about this.
And what are you hearing from your colleagues regarding about the travel to these countries and sort of the long-term impact of people not going and how that's going to impact these countries?
these countries have definitely may feel the sting of tourism and investment that may drop off. But at this point, it's all about safety. Honestly, if we don't get control of this now, it's going to be a bigger problem down the road.
Okay, Dr. Elaina George, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Sales of U.S. autos jumped in July, continuing the momentum from June. Analysts say incentives and rebates helped to boost spending. Chrysler saw the biggest increase at 20%. Ford saw a 10% increase, helped by strong demand for SUVs. And despite recent recalls and its recent woes over faulty ignition switches, GM saw its best July in 7 years. It appears Google's plan for a floating office space in Portland, Maine, is sinking. The Portland Press-Herald says a barge off the city's coast is headed for the scrapyard. The empty containers were supposed to be converted into what Google called an interactive space. It's unclear why the tech giant abandoned the project. And a relic from the fight of the century has sold at auction. Muhammad Ali's boxing gloves from his match against heavyweight champ Joe Frazier went up for auction in Texas. An anonymous bidder won the gloves for $388,000, a price only topped by Ali's first World Championship gloves that went for over $800,000. By the way, Ali lost the match against Frazier, which became known as the fight of the century for setting the record paid to fighters. Ahead, our favorite person of the day blames a sex cream for failing a drug test. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
If I was building my own news network, first thing I think I'd want high-quality reporters, very educated, intelligent people.
Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Julian Phillips.
I'm Wendy Gillette.
I'm Sophia Songhai.
I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey. Thank you for joining us here in New York City.
I would like to see more people of color represented in high positions in media.
We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well.
People need to understand the problems that are going on in the community are much closer than we actually think they are.
Kayla Phillips is one of the shoppers who is suing Barney's, and she is here with her attorney. What is it that you want from them?
Not to judge every African-American person that comes in your store.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. People give all sorts of excuses for failing drug tests. I ate too many poppy seed bagels. That doesn't work. Or I was hanging with friends who smoke pot and I got a contact high. That doesn't work either. Or I drink too much coffee. That definitely doesn't work. Usually the excuses fall flat, but one cop's excuse for flunking a drug test was so creative, the Miami Beach Police Department had to give him his job back. Homicide detective Reinaldo Casas tested positive for cocaine and was fired. But Casas says he didn't use cocaine. He used a sex cream to improve the performance of his, police baton. He claims he got the cream from a Cuban friend who told him it would improve his sexual liaisons, but no one could say exactly what this so-called magic potion was. But the story was good enough for arbitrators who gave Casas his job back. And so, Officer Reinaldo Casas is our favorite person of the day. Coming up next, the secrets to having a celebrity-like smile and the business behind it. And it is Friday, so it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Stay with us on Arise Exchange.
Looking at mainstream news stations where only you have a very small minority of people of color being newscasters and actually having prominent roles in the media.
In a newsroom in the United States, maybe 10% of decision makers come from communities of diversity. That's not right.
Well, diversity is important because the more complete the news is, the more accurate a picture you're getting of the world, and the more you can form an accurate opinion of things.
The vision here is not just to tell the main stories of the day, but to tell the news that other organizations don't tell, and tell it in a way that people like me, people that look like me, that look like you, are interested in.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News. Arise News, every culture, every angle.
I don't think the television news in the United States reflects the diversity of the world. I don't think it does a great job of even reflecting the diversity of the United States.
When you are watching TV, you don't really see a lot of different cultures. There are plenty of other places that people might not even know about.
We are living in a global culture, and you cannot hide news that is happening when there's so much social media.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
In tonight's corner office, the business of cosmetic dentistry. Everyone wants $1 million smile, and according to the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, more than 600,000 patients every year undergo some type of cosmetic procedure. However, besides the pretty pearly whites, our next guest says a quick trip to the dentist could also save your life. Welcome to the program, author of Your Dentist, Diabetes and You, celebrity cosmetic dentist and Colgate spokesperson, Dr. Catrise Austin. Doctor, thank you for coming to Arise Exchange.
Thank you, Andrew.
So first, what is cosmetic dentistry, and who are some of the people who are coming to see you these days?
Cosmetic dentistry is any procedure that can enhance your smile very quickly and painless. Teeth whitening is the number one requested procedure, but it can be anything from a little chip on your teeth, your front teeth. It can be fixed in a day. We have one-day procedures that can change your smile and change your lives.
And have you seen people, more people come in for cosmetic procedures, especially as the economy has improved a little bit and people need to look good to go back to work?
Absolutely. Your smile is one of the first things that people will notice about you. So you asked who are my clients. It's the everyday hardworking person that wants to look good and be socially accepted.
And who are some of the celebrities you treat that you could talk about?
Oh, gosh.
And any secrets to their smiles?
Oh, talk show host Wendy Williams, Paula Abdul.
Great smiles.
Karina Smirnoff and Maxim from Dancing with the Stars. Rappers Common and Busta Rhymes. Lots of clients.
So besides teeth whitening, what are the other cosmetic procedures that people are doing? Fixing teeth, straightening out teeth. I guess there's hidden braces that you can put in these days.
Oh gosh, we now have technology that is booming. Fast braces can fix your smile within 3 to 6 months. So where we used to have to wait 2 years, we can now with technology fix your smile in 3 to 6 months. Dental implants, a game changer. If you're missing teeth, you don't have to wear dentures that slip out and you have to use denture cream. There's so many advances, and now we can do the snap-on smile. It's like the grill of cosmetic dentistry. We snap in the perfect smile.
And what people may not recognize about going to the dentist is your teeth and your mouth says a lot about your health.
Yes, it does.
Some of the health issues that you can catch by going to the dentist these days.
Well, there are over 120 diseases that I, as a dentist, can detect by just doing a dental exam. From diabetes, I can tell. I can eye test for HIV. I was the first to do that.
That's right. You're doing that. And that, by the way, and I want to talk more about the other diseases, but getting people tested and easy access is one of the most challenging parts of this.
It is. And now in the last couple of years, they've made it easy where you can do it at home. But when I started in 2009, there were only your doctor who wasn't routinely asking you for the test. And my thought was, if you're coming to the dentist and you should be coming twice a year, why not offer it? And it's just a swab of the mouth and we can give you the results in 20 minutes. So it was a game changer for my practice.
And then there are other health issues, right? I understand that oral cancer, we have about 30 seconds left, is on a rise here.
On a rise. You don't even have to be a smoker, but if you drink alcohol and you smoke, you definitely are at risk. So these are health history questions that I will ask in my practice.
Okay, so everybody should see the dentist
twice a year. And brush, floss, rinse, and scrape at home at least 3 times a day.
Okay, Dr. Catrise Austin, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Andrew.
Okay, nice to meet you.
You too.
Next week on Arise Exchange, we are going to be live at the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., where more than 45 heads of state and 100 ministers will be in attendance. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. We'll see you from the nation's capital next Monday.
Stay seated.